Welcome to UFC World. What happens when an absolute MMA legend is brutally knocked out from behind in a chaotic post-fight riot? And how does that same chaotic energy connect to the wildest comeback fight in modern UFC history? Today, we are uncovering the shocking truth behind Wanderlei Silva's recent hospital emergency and previewing the massive legacy clash at UFC 329 between Conor McGregor and Max Holloway. We will dive deep into the brutal brawl in Brazil, look at the medical fallout, and break down the massive welterweight return that everyone is talking about. The ultimate home for hardcore fight fans. For decades, Wanderlei Silva represented everything that made mixed martial arts so captivating to watch. He was completely fearless, relentless, and always willing to walk through massive punishment if it meant finishing his opponent. Fans admired that ferocious mentality because every single time he stepped into the ring, they knew something unforgettable was about to happen. Today, however, the conversation surrounding the former Pride champion is no longer centered on championship victories or spectacular knockouts. Instead, fans around the world are deeply worried about his health, following a disturbing incident in Brazil that has once again raised serious questions about the long-term dangers of combat sports. 7 years had passed since Wanderlei Silva last competed in any form of professional combat competition. He had already received one of the highest honors possible when the UFC welcomed him into its Hall of Fame. Recognizing his extraordinary impact on the sport, it seemed like the perfect ending to an absolutely unforgettable career. But fate had something entirely different in store for the legend. Silva was scheduled to participate in a special exhibition boxing event in Sao Paulo. Originally, he was supposed to face fellow UFC Hall of Famer Vitor Belfort in a match that promised to celebrate two legendary careers. Unfortunately, Belfort withdrew because of an injury shortly before the event took place. Rather than canceling his highly anticipated appearance, Silva accepted a brand new opponent. Standing across from him would be Brazilian boxing legend Asalino Popo Freitas, a former world champion with years of elite boxing experience. Although Silva entered the ring carrying significantly more weight than Freitas, anyone familiar with boxing understood a crucial reality. Weight alone would never erase decades of elite technical experience. Freitas had spent his entire life perfecting the sweet science of boxing. As soon as the opening rounds began, the massive difference in boxing ability became increasingly obvious. Freitas repeatedly landed clean, crisp punches, while Silva struggled to establish any kind of rhythm. Despite his legendary toughness, the former MMA superstar found himself reacting instead of dictating the action. Frustration slowly began replacing patience, and the fight took a dark turn. During the third round, Silva shoved Freitas hard to the canvas, creating immediate tension inside the ring. Tempers flared wildly, punches were exchanged after the bell, and the atmosphere became increasingly hostile. The referee repeatedly warned Silva about illegal headbutts throughout the contest. Eventually, after multiple warnings, enough was enough. The referee officially disqualified Wanderlei Silva during the fourth round. For most exhibition matches, that would have marked the definitive end of the evening. Instead, it became the beginning of complete and utter chaos. Seconds after the disqualification quickly escalated into a full-scale brawl, with dozens of people pushing, shouting, and throwing wild punches in every single direction. Then, everything became even more disturbing. Amid the massive confusion, an unidentified man wearing a tuxedo suddenly entered the confrontation. Video footage appears to show the man striking Wanderlei Silva directly from behind, before eventually landing a powerful punch that knocked the 49-year-old legend unconscious. Silva collapsed instantly to the floor. For several frightening moments, he remained completely motionless on the canvas, while the fight around him continued to rage on. Members of his own team eventually dragged his unconscious body toward the corner, as security struggled desperately to restore order. At first, nobody knew who the cowardly attacker was. That mystery did not last long, however. Brazilian reports later identified the man as Raphael Freitas, the son of Asalino Freitas, who also has professional experience in boxing. Shortly after the incident, Raphael reportedly deleted his Instagram account, while social media posts that had identified him were also quickly removed. News of the shocking knockout spread rapidly across the entire MMA world. Some people focused on how the brawl had originally started, others focused entirely on the punch itself. One of the strongest reactions came from former UFC heavyweight champion Fabricio Werdum, who had been standing directly in Wanderlei Silva's corner that evening. Werdum strongly condemned the attack, describing the entire situation as an ambush, involving overwhelming numbers against Silva's small team. According to him, Wanderlei had first been struck in the back of the head, before receiving the final punch that left him unconscious. He warned that the consequences could easily have been far more serious. Perhaps even more surprising was the reaction from Chael Sonnen. For years, Sonnen and Silva shared one of the most heated rivalries in mixed martial arts history. They exchanged bitter insults, nearly fought during filming of The Ultimate Fighter Brazil, and eventually settled their differences inside the cage. Yet, after watching what happened in Sao Paulo, Sonnen immediately defended his former rival. He argued that Wanderlei Silva had become the victim of an unacceptable assault. According to Sonnen, Silva had agreed to fight one opponent inside the ring, not someone entering unexpectedly without gloves, without hand wraps, and attacking from behind after the contest had already descended into chaos. To Sonnen, there was simply no justification for what happened. Asalino Freitas, however, offered a completely different perspective on the situation. The boxing legend suggested that the confrontation began after members of Silva's team entered the ring, pointing specifically toward Fabricio Werdum. His version of events differed significantly from Silva's camp, making it clear that both sides viewed the incident very differently, regardless of who initiated the confrontation. One fact remained completely undeniable: Wanderlei Silva left the arena in an ambulance. Doctors later confirmed that he had suffered a fractured nose. Fortunately, after several hours of intensive medical examinations, he was discharged from the hospital, but the physical injuries visible on his face were only part of the growing concern. The following day, Silva updated fans about his current condition. He explained that he continued experiencing severe headaches and persistent dizziness. His right eye had swollen dramatically, making it difficult medical testing after returning home to Curitiba. For many fans, those words were deeply unsettling. To understand why this incident resonated so deeply throughout the MMA community, we need to go back to where everything began, long before he became one of the greatest fighters in combat sports history. Wanderlei Silva was simply a young boy growing up in Curitiba, Brazil. Life there was not always easy. Street fights became a regular part of his childhood long before professional competition ever entered the picture. Eventually, a local gym owner noticed his raw determination and encouraged him to channel that aggression into martial arts. That single decision would change MMA history forever. Silva began training at the famous Shoot Box Academy, where he immersed himself in Muay Thai and kickboxing from an early age. The philosophy inside Shoot Box was simple: constant pressure, relentless aggression, and never take a single backward step. Few athletes ever represented those values more completely than Wanderlei Silva. Every punch he threw carried bad intentions. Every exchange felt like a brutal battle for survival. He was not interested in winning careful decisions. He wanted spectacular finishes. Silva made his professional MMA debut in 1996. And immediately showcased the explosive style that would later make him famous. After building experience in Brazil, he eventually reached the UFC, but it was not until he arrived in Japan that his career truly exploded. Inside Pride Fighting Championships, Wanderlei Silva transformed from a dangerous contender into a global superstar. Japanese audiences embraced him like one of their own. Every single entrance generated enormous anticipation. Every fight felt like a major sporting event. Fans knew they were about to witness violence delivered at the highest possible level. In 2001, Silva defeated Kazushi Sakuraba to capture the Pride Middleweight Championship. That historic victory marked the beginning of one of the greatest championship reigns in MMA history. He defended the title 4 consecutive times. His historic reign lasted an astonishing 1,939 days, making it the longest championship reign Pride FC would ever see. During his years in Pride, Silva established records for victories, knockouts, title defenses, winning streaks, and several other achievements that still define the organization's history. From 1999 through 2004, very few fighters appeared capable of stopping him. Night after night, he overwhelmed elite opponents with non-stop aggression and devastating Muay Thai attacks. Perhaps no rivalry better captured his dominance than his battles with Quinton Rampage Jackson. Their first 2 meetings became instant classics. Silva's brutal knees inside the clinch became legendary, producing some of the most memorable knockouts the sport has ever witnessed. One finish in particular became iconic, with Jackson collapsing helplessly into the ropes. Years later, Sports Illustrated recognized Silva's knockout of Jackson as the knockout of the decade, considering the countless unforgettable finishes throughout combat sports during that era. Receiving such recognition demonstrated just how extraordinary Wanderlei Silva truly was. At the height of his career, he was not simply winning championships, he became the face of an entire organization for countless fans across Japan and around the world. Watching Wanderlei Silva compete was not just entertainment, it was an unforgettable experience. Now, March is no longer about proving potential, it is about protecting legacy. Conor McGregor has insisted throughout Fight Week that he expects nothing less than a spectacular finish. During interviews, he revived the famous Mystic Mac persona that once predicted many of his greatest victories. According to McGregor, victory alone is not enough. He believes it must be completely unforgettable. That intense confidence has always been one of the defining characteristics of his historic career, even after years away from competition and countless personal setbacks. He continues speaking exactly as he did during his championship years. Whether fans admire that confidence or criticize it, very few athletes possess the ability to command global attention with every single sentence they speak. Max Holloway, meanwhile, has taken a completely different approach. Rather than engaging in endless trash talk, he has allowed his years of activity and consistency to speak for themselves. His relentless pace, remarkable durability, and extraordinary boxing volume remain among the most respected qualities in the entire sport. Very few fighters can maintain the high pressure Holloway produces over 5 hard rounds. He forces opponents into exhausting exchanges, breaks their rhythm, and steadily increases the pace until critical mistakes begin to appear. That unique style has frustrated world champions for years. The big question now is whether it can overcome McGregor's signature explosiveness at welterweight. Several well-known figures have already shared their opinions. Paddy Pimblett believes McGregor's size and power at 170 pounds could produce a clean knockout. Georges St-Pierre offered a more balanced perspective, explaining that if McGregor has truly rediscovered the hunger that defined his championship run, fans could witness an unforgettable fight. Even Dustin Poirier, the man who twice defeated McGregor and was present during the Irishman's devastating leg injury, has weighed in with his own expectations. Despite those differing viewpoints, one conclusion keeps emerging: no one truly knows what will happen. That profound uncertainty is precisely what transformed this fight from an interesting comeback into one of the year's biggest sporting events. Odds makers currently favor Holloway, reflecting his recent activity and McGregor's lengthy absence. Those numbers are entirely understandable. 5 years without competition is an enormous obstacle for any fighter to overcome. However, betting markets cannot measure confidence, motivation, or the psychological impact of a legendary athlete determined to prove that his story is not over. Nor can they fully measure the effect that one perfectly timed left hand could have. As the official weigh-ins approach, attention will shift toward body language, physical condition, and the final face-off. Fans will analyze every stare, every smile, and every reaction, searching for vital clues. Then, once fight night finally arrives, all speculation will completely disappear. There will be no more interviews, no more social media exchanges, no more predictions, only 25 minutes, or perhaps far less, to discover which version of history will be written. Will Conor McGregor complete one of the greatest comebacks the UFC has ever witnessed? Or will Max Holloway prove that years of consistency ultimately defeat years of absence? Only the octagon can answer those burning questions. One thing, however, already seems absolutely certain. Whether you support McGregor, Holloway, or simply love